why can't we do it some kind of a tiered system or incentivize safety? Someone that has a proven record should be able to make their own decision.
That was the voice of Lisa Schmitt of Wisconsin, whose business partner and husband, Lee Schmitt, as regular readers may well know, has requested an exemption from parts of the hours of service for himself. This is the first such exemption request from an individual owner I've seen hit the Federal Register and go up for comment in quite some time. Testament to the methodical nature of the Schmitts' pursuit of the exemption, well likely. It's not like it's particularly difficult, though, to break through the dam, as it were, of the federal regulatory system. Just a little more from Lisa on that front.
We researched this for years. We looked up why other exemptions had been denied. We sat in the truck on a January evening and went through 381 step by step by step. We spelled out what we wanted. We said why. We said how we will be safe. And then we summarized it again as to how and why and safety. That's all we did. On 2 pages, it was all it took. It's not like it took 14 written pages to write an exemption. We don't have an organization that wrote it. We wrote it.
I'm Todd Dills, as usual, your host for this week's edition of the Overdrive Radio podcast, dropping June 17th, 2022. And in the wake of the Federal Register notice putting the exemption request up for comment, nearly 600 comments have been filed thus far. But there's been some confusion among some in the audience I know about just what Lee Schmitt is asking for here. In a word, flexibility. To use a daily 11 hours worth of driving however he sees fit. He asks for exemption from the requirement to take a 10-hour break, from the 14-hour daily duty maximum, from the cumulative 60 and 7 days and or 70 and 8 days duty limitations, but crucially not from the 11-hour maximum daily drive time limits. A fact lost on some readers who didn't fully engage with the hours of service exemption request summary, as Lee noted.
Yeah. But the summary doesn't say that I'm not going over the 11 hours. So when people see the summary that they put out, everybody's making this, oh my God, this driver's going to drive carte blanche.
It wasn't lost on all commenters, though. In what appears to have been among the first of the comments filed to the exemption request docket, one James Burns put it this way, quote, allowing drivers the flexibility to sleep when they're tired and drive when they're arrested is much safer than forcing them to stay off duty for 10 hours than potentially drive when they are tired. This should be an option for all drivers, end quote. And that, with caveats of experience and proven safety, is part of what the Schmitts are hoping for when it comes to the ultimate fate of what they're requesting. We're going to hear more from them, but before we do, I want to pause here to air recollections of and tribute to owner-operator Troy Huddleston, well known around the business and the truck show circuit particularly, with several owners, my colleague and Overdrive news editor Matt Cole caught up with the Shell Rotella Super Rigs event this past weekend. From the drop deck trailer of Chewette Novosad at the show, I'll pay tribute to the man whom I know all will miss tremendously. Huddleston passed away unexpectedly June 7th, way too soon. He was just 54. My condolences to his family in Illinois.
I'd like to say a little something about my good friend, Mr. Troy. My name is Bubba Branch out of Lakeland, Florida. My company is Atlas Heavy Haul. If I had a word to describe Mr. Troy, it would be encouraging. He was very encouraging all the time for me. That's one of the reasons why we're here today. He talked to me about showing this truck, and I'd always doubt myself, and he'd always hear me. And he always correct me about that and tell me to stop doing that. And he'd tell you why you shouldn't do it. And I just have to say, the first time I met him, we were in Wildwood, Florida at the truck show there. I was parked next to him, not in his class. I could never have attained that high. But he was there, and he spent hours talking to me, and like he had known me forever. And that was where our friendship began there, and we exchanged numbers, and all the way from buying English Bulldogs to trucking. That's what we talked about. And but the things I can tell you about him was when we would talk about family, and he would bring up Miss Huddleston and his girls and his family. Period. He would just light up. I mean, he's a wonderful man. and a great father, and he thought the world of his family and his friends, and this is part of his family too, all of us, and we knew that. He made that very clear to us, and we never second guessed that. It didn't matter what time of day or night it was. If you needed him, you could always call him. And that's just, we love him. We're gonna miss him, and he is our legend. He'll always live forever.
My name's Robert Hallahan with Hallahan Transport out of La Crosse, Wisconsin. I've known Troy for about 15 years, knowing him from shows, and he was an inspiration to me. The last few years, I got to be really close, I seen him almost every weekend, I did a lot of shows, and he taught me so much, and he was always willing to open up. If you had a question, he was always willing to help everybody. And I mean, he's a true legend. He could never replace the man. He's awesome.
I'm Donnie Emmons and Sons Trucking. But I met Troy back in '91 over at Cowden. We hauled ammonia together about a year. And after that, me and Troy, we would talk on the phone, give me pointers about old Freightliners. I mean, he's a good dude. He really was. And I got the call, I guess it's Tuesday, as a white trash customer from Dill McKinney. And I didn't know what to say. I mean, he just shocked. And Dill same way. I mean, what could you say? He's a good fella. In my truck, I mean, I never felt it was good enough for shows and stuff, which, I mean, I ain't really ever won nothing, but Troy just said, hey, it ain't your time. I mean, everything come back to old school stuff. He said, you'll get it. Just hang in there. Keep going. But no, he's a good guy.
I'm Randy Victories with Randy Victory Trucking. I met Troy in Louisville one year. Me and him competed together, and he just got through with his red Freightliner, and I took my Pete down there, and I beat him in a couple classes. Then he come back out. Me and him was talking. He was looking at my old truck, and I told old Troy. He said, "I'm gonna come over and look at your truck." So he come over and looked at his. I went and looked at mine. And I went over and looked at Troy's. So we went back to my truck. I told Troy, I said, Troy, you know what beat you, don't you? I said, look at the front of my truck, then look at the front of yours. He said, what are you talking about? I said, mine's a Peterbilt and yours is a Freightliner. Oh, he turned this as red as his truck did and walked off. And about 3 hours later, he come back and he hugged me. He said, man, ain't nothing against you. But he said, but I love my Freightliners. But yeah, I love old Troy to death. Me and him, we talk when he called all the time. And I was building a 359. I was telling him the stuff I was doing. He had to turn the sleeper around backwards. He said, oh, it never worked. And it worked. I sent him pictures, and he said, boy, you could have saved me a lot of work on them suicide doors. So, yeah, Troy, we love you, man. Wish you was here with us right now, and we going to miss you. We definitely missing you right now.
I'm Terry Aislinger with Easy Living Express out of Mark 1, Missouri. First time I met Troy was about 8 years ago. We had got invited to a show up in Peoria, Illinois at the Midwest Truckers Association. It was the first time we had ever really done a show and didn't really know a lot, and took our kids up there. And anytime you're wrestling around a bunch of little kids around high dollar trucks, a lot of people's really anal. They don't want them looking at stuff, touching stuff. And Troy had his red Freightliner up there and had the doors chained on. It was the first time I'd ever seen anybody do that and all. And one of my little ones kept looking up there, and he said, tell her to go on up there and get, she can sit in there and get her picture taken. I was like, no, sir, they don't have to do that. And oh, yeah, he said, you let her do that. He knew that the kids was the future of our industry. And from the first time we met him up there, every time we sent him at a show after that, he treated my kids and myself like we were family. With my truck that I just am bringing down here for the first time since getting it redone, a lot of his influences went in on it. I put an old style sleeper on it, and I really wanted a set of star windows to match my theme. And those was real popular on the old vans, but you can't buy that stuff anymore. And I told him about my ideals on it, and he's like, man, he goes, I'm still a member of a lot of them van groups because he always liked to build custom vans. And he made a post and helped me find 4 of them van windows that got it to what I wanted it. And he'll definitely be missed. He was a big influence, great family guy, and a great example to us all what to be out here. And when we say we do these shows, because after doing them, you meet people like sitting on this trailer and like Troy, that becomes more like family than friends, and are a hell of a lot closer to you than what your actual blood family is in a lot of ways. And it's just a big influence to keep your focus looking up, keep you encouraged, and keep you loving what you do.
I'm T.W. McDermott. met Troy, I guess about the time Facebook got popular. Was friends with him there and grew into family. And if you could, you say, if you had one word to describe Troy, I'd say Elmer's. So he was kind of the glue that kind of held all this together, whether that's friendships or lack of friendships or how to put your truck together to make it look cool or how to keep your wife from wanting to kill you or whatever. We've had a lot of good conversations, and he's going to be missed in this industry. But yeah, there's one of us, he's been everything from a chrome guidance guy to a marriage counselor to, hell, a referee probably at a couple of these events. But you can look around, you'll see people that don't like Freightliners, don't like Kenworth, don't like Peterbilt, or like, this, that, or the other. But you can look long and hard, you ain't gonna find nobody that didn't like Troy. And whether they were Roadworks fans or not, they were Troy fans. The industry's gonna miss him. He's like a brother to me. I'm damn sure gonna miss him. Monday's gonna be hard. I hope it's the longest weekend we have. I'm not looking forward to Monday. It's gonna be a rough one. And it's gonna be a rough one for everybody. But his kids have now got, there's a bunch of dads here on anything they'll ever need. They're a beautiful family, and we've created a beautiful family in this game, and I enjoy every minute of it. And like I said, we're gonna miss him. He was a great one. This is baseball. He's been our Babe Ruth. We're gonna love him and miss him forever. Here you go, brother.
Damn, how do I follow up that one? All right, I'm Caleb Hammond, Excavation. First time I met Troy was back whenever I think it was, I can't remember what year it was, but it was the first year I actually got to take a truck to 4 states, and it ended up making the calendar. And me and him, we had to go at the same time to go get shot for the calendar, and we had a good old time and had fun and shot the crap and just had a good time. He didn't treat us like a stranger or an outcast. I mean, we was new to it, and he just welcomed us with open arms and everything. Well, fast forward to March, I got talked into going to Louisville, and I took my truck up there and everything, and I was underneath the truck touching some paint on the T-bar, and he walked up there and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, that voice sounds familiar. And I crawled up underneath, and I looked up, and it was Troy just sitting down there grinning, looking at me. He's like, well, you need to do it. And he started showing me what I needed to do, because I've never competed in a truck show like that and everything. And he spent a good 3 or 4 hours just showing me what I needed to do to help me. And I mean, I never would have figured from that photo shoot that man would have remembered who I was, being a nobody and everything else. But one thing about Troy, he never met a stranger, and he was always willing to share his knowledge with anybody at that. I mean, he always had a smile on his face, and he was just one heck of a good guy. And I mean, the short time that I known him, he became one of my really good friends. He was one of the very first people that really welcomed me into the show deal, and he won't be forgotten. I always considered him a really good friend, and he's definitely going to be missed.
My name is Dean DeSantis, and I am the career gambler owner truck. And just saying a couple things here about Troy. I kind of knew Troy more from a business standpoint. The parent company that I once was employed with had a subsidiary in Indianapolis where Troy provided services for that entity. And, I just tell you from a business standpoint, he was an upfront, honest, straight guy that was on time, always did everything that he said he was going to do. I never heard a complaint. The people that were shipping the products and obviously counting on him to show up and the trucks to show up and be timely. He always did everything that he said he was going to do, just really a stand-up guy. And here recently, at a show also in Missouri a couple months ago, I actually got to meet him for the first time. So the irony there being that, we did business, but we really never had a personal relationship. And I got to meet him. He was representing Roadworks. We had some questions and things that we had for Roadworks, and he was there to respond. And we got to know his family that weekend, which was kind of great. I'd like to remember all those positive things. It's kind of a travesty to understand what we're dealing with this week. It's going to be a terrible thing. Just way too young. When people start passing away at that age, it's just never a good thing. So, I'd like to, just say to the family that our heart is with them, and hopefully, you can find some closure to this. It's just a terrible situation, but what a stand-up guy. And he always represented himself very well.
Hi, Teresa DeSantis, the Witch is In. I knew Troy from a couple orders I've done with my bumpers and everything, and everything turned out perfect. They all knew me. He was willing to help, and I met him a couple months ago with my husband at a truck show, and just very nice. Told me about his stacks and new products, and just sad to hear he passed away.
I'm Wes and Cindy with Prairieville. I would put it in words. The trucking world has suffered a huge loss. I got to know Troy through dealing with roadworks, getting all my stainless chrome through them. Always a pleasure to deal with him. One heck of a guy.
It was truly an honor to call him our friend.
Again, condolences to the family. There's a video version of those recollections that you can find at overdriveonline.com. Now, Lisa and Lee Schmitt. When we talked early this week, it had been quite a while since I had heard from them. How were they doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Busy, bored, changes day by day.
In the trucking business?
So we're home on a sabbatical right now. We're technically not leased to any carrier.
Oh, okay.
And, we're going to see what happens with this exemption, really, before we make our decision. We could sell the truck tomorrow. We could go back to work tomorrow. It's totally up in the air right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys were leased when you sent that exemption request in. That would have been several months ago, right?
Yeah, we were leased to D&E out of Minnesota.
What led up to the decision to do this? Give me the story, and kind of, we're in a world where there are exemptions being used in pretty widespread ways, as you noted in your request.
Schmitt's exemption request noted the existence of the COVID-19 Pandemic Emergency Declaration's waiver of parts of the hours of service, likewise mentioning the reality that Lee had used that at various times over the last couple of years, been in place for a variety of commodities, and used it safely, among other variations on the hours of service. But that waiver is of maximum drive time limits in the hours of service. Schmitt, as noted, is not asking for any more than 11 hours of driving per day, though he is asking for an exemption from the cumulative duty limitations, the 60 hours in 7 days or 70 hours in 8 days limits. The story of how he came to this stretches back to around the time I first met the Schmitts, when they were in the interesting position of protesting the mandate for ELDs while hauling in a truck festooned with advertising for a then upstart ELD provider, the 120 Company. That's another story, though. And you can read and hear that one in the archives from recent years at overdriveonline.com. Search the Schmitts' names there to find it. Here's Lee taking us back to Washington, D.C., around the time of the ELD mandate coming into play in late 2017, early 2018.
Back when we first went to D.C. about the ELDs,
right,
I was hollering to everybody back then, I could care less if I had 10 hours to drive. Let me do it how I want.
Right.
I looked at Joe and Bill and whoever else was there. I said, I would almost bet if you walked down there to everybody that's parked on Constitution Avenue, if you said, all right, guys, we're going to keep the ELD, but I'll tell you what, you're only going to be allowed to run 10 hours in a 24-hour period, but you can do it how you want. What do you think? I looked at him and I said, I bet you almost 99% of us would say yes and leave.
Right.
I said, the biggest problem is the 14-hour clock. I said, if you get rid of that, I don't care what we have to drive. That would eliminate a lot of issues with a lot of things. I said drivers would not stop, wouldn't have to be fighting over a split sleeper, and they would stop when they wanted to because you don't have a clock sitting in your face.
Right.
I said, there's a lot of benefits to it. And, oh, that'll never fly. That will never fly. And we've been talking about this for years, that there's got to be a way to get this in. We've got to figure out how to word it and do everything right so that we can get to the Federal Register.
Right.
And as you know, on the FMCSA website, it has every exemption listed and whether it was approved or denied, and if it was denied, why it was denied.
Right.
90% of those don't meet all the criteria that is listed in the Green Book under 381.310 that tells you exactly how to file for an exemption.
Lisa's right. That's Title 49, Code of Federal Regulations, 381.310. Easily accessible online as well, and generally fairly clear on what's required to qualify for an exemption.
The biggest one is, how do you address the safety if this is granted?
Right.
And we address that. I'm kind of leery that we don't have enough data in our request, so I will be including more data in my comments.
When you a question real quick though, Lisa, when you mentioned more data, it seems like if you can show Lee's safe driving history, that's a good data point to be in there. I don't know if you could put in a copy of the MVR or something like that.
Yes, I was going to include it, but I figured FMCSA could pull it up in one computer click, you know, so I didn't. I thought, well, God, these guys are smart enough to do that. Well, I am going to include it. We've talked about that. Just in case they're not smart enough to pull it up, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Well, I mean, he ran under every exemption. He ran under the COVID. We've ran under disaster relief. Ran ag, which was 24/7. We've ran oil field. We've ran that one a lot. We run the oversized where you're exempt from the 30. Right. So he hasn't had any accidents under all of them. Why would he have an accident if he was granted this?
I guess one of the things that I think about, like why would they not grant this exemption, is that maybe they don't want this to set some kind of a precedent, right?
But they can't deny it on that.
But it sounds like to me that you guys are hoping that it will. Okay?
I'm hoping it goes through, you know, and that is my biggest thing. I just want people to read it. I keep telling them I'm not going over the 11 hours in a 24-hour period. I said, legally, I'm asking for less than I legally could do. I said, because even with an ELD right now, any given day, I could drive 13 hours in a 24-hour period. I'm asking for 11 in a 24-hour period. I'm not, and there's various ways people could say, well, you're just going to skirt this. One comment that was made to me is shippers and receivers are going to take advantage of you. Why? It's not like I walk around with a sign that says, hey, this guy can drive 11 hours any period in a 24.
And the shippers are taking advantage of us now anyway. So what's the difference?
I mean, I guess there is how you do that, like where the 11. I mean, theoretically, you could string together 2 11-hour periods that end at midnight on a particular day.
Somebody was saying, well, he can run 22 hours straight. Okay, so I can run 22 hours straight. I'm stopped now for 13 because I can only drive 11 in a 24. You know, so it's not like you're going to be able to do this every day, day after day after day.
Right.
You know, that, and right now, good example would be I could just get my license last month, go drive for a major carrier that hauls a certain commodity that's COVID exempt and drive around the clock.
Right.
And I have no experience, a month experience, but I'm qualified because of the commodity I haul, because of the government's infinite wisdom that says, oh God, we got to give everybody this exemption, not based on years of experience.
This kind of approach to request of an exemption is something that, you know, I've talked to many folks about in the past, which is tying flexibility in how you use your hours in the regulations to proven safety, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's sort of the precedent you guys hope to set, I think, right?
And that's what we hope to accomplish with this is if we get it denied, we're going to
reapply.
Yeah, we're going to adjust our exemption request to handle whatever the denial's for. And then if it's approved, there's no reason for others not to get it. Right. And at some point, with data, specifically from the COVID, exemption that's been going on for 2 years.
Regular listeners will recall a data collection effort around the COVID waiver by the Trucker Nation group that we reported on. The effort, centered around the FMCSAreporting.com website, seeks to illustrate with data the safety performance of carriers utilizing that waiver to, frankly, more parts of the hours of service than just what the Schmitts are asking for themselves.
Why can't we do it some kind of a tiered system or incentivize safety? Someone that has a proven record should be able to make their own decisions.
Clearly, you guys were very diligent in how you approached this and got it through with everything that you needed. That's was there any kind of any kind of trick to that? Was it just a matter of reading what's required and following it to the T when you sent the exemption request in, or was it pretty simple?
It is following what the government wants.
Yeah.
For years we've gone at them with different things in DC. We've tried this approach, we've tried that approach. It's never worked. The book tells you what they want. Exactly, answer the questions exactly the way they want. And to clear something up, I'd like to. A lot of people read the summary and see that I'm asking for all these exemptions from the 14, the 10 consecutive off, the half-hour break. The reason I asked for that, rather than just saying, hey, I want to do 11 into 24, is because I want to make sure that they know that I understand the regs.
Yep.
I'm asking not to follow the 14 and not to be on a 10 consecutive off so that I can do the 11 how I want in a 24. The half-hour break, I wrote in my exemption request that I haul oversized. I use that all the time.
Right.
That's nothing big. The 60 and 70, that I just threw that in because the hours of service rules were put in place in 1938. They're antiquated. They're not up to date. They don't match with the equipment that we have today. And it's not 1938, 40, 50, 60-year-old equipment. This is 2020 equipment, even 2000 something. This equipment is not like it was back then. The hours need to reflect that. If you're not going to change the hours of service to go with the equipment, let us do it how we feel is comfortable for us. So that's why I just asked for them things. And if they don't get rid of the 60, 70, whatever. But it's just something I'm like, you know what? All of this is tied together. If you're only going to go 11 a day, what difference does it make? Why do you have to do a 34 restart? When you're stopped every night, why do we have to sit for 34 at the end of the week? Just because we hit some imaginary clock?
An owner-operator who knows his limits and manages rest well, Schmitts is implying here, ought to be able to effectively manage the very real impacts of what's known as cumulative fatigue, with chronic lack of rest building up over time to increasingly hamper performance down the line. With that in mind, though, I asked Schmitts this question.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see this approach to hours of service as being appropriate for the entire universe of CDL holders, I wouldn't imagine it.
No.
But the government obviously does if they give the COVID exemption to anybody that hauls a COVID exempt load. Like Lee said, you could get your CDL yesterday and be out tomorrow driving carte blanche 24/7 if you run a COVID load. We researched this for years. We looked up why other exemptions had been denied. We sat in the truck on a January evening and went through 381 step by step by step. We spelled out what we wanted. We said why. We said how we will be safe. And then we summarized it again as to how and why and safety. That's all we did. On 2 pages, it was all it took. It's not like it took 14 written pages to write an exemption. We don't have an organization that wrote it. We wrote it. The two of us. I typed it on the computer. We don't have an organization. We don't have a lawyer. We don't have, any kind of a group. It's not like the Riggers Association that wanted the 30-minute break gone. It's not
Right.
like Oweida's writing this. It's just us. We wrote
Just
it.
you guys, yeah. You could tell on that. Well, anyway, they actually got an image of the envelope that you sent it in, which I think is probably come from your house. Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wrote it in January and didn't mail it until March sometime. I don't even know exactly when. It was when I found a stamp in an envelope. But that gave us time. I do believe we had a couple of friends read through it and give us their advice, and we
Right.
changed a few things, and it gave us time to think it over and maybe change anything we needed to before we submitted it.
Right.
It wasn't poof, I got up one morning and let's write an exemption today. Okay, cool. We'll submit it at the end of the day. We didn't do that.
Right.
This was a long time in talking, a long time in planning, a long time in thinking out.
If this goes back to, like you said, everybody all of a sudden thinking, oh, God, if he got it, I should be allowed it. Okay, maybe, but maybe my hopes is this, if I am granted this, maybe the government will get bombarded with more people asking for an exemption. If it's not worded correctly, you're not going to get in. And if they turn around and say, well, you gave it to him, I want the same thing, I'm going to follow the same safety protocols. Well, all right. Maybe you don't have as many years experience as I do. Maybe this will force the FMCSA to look at the hours of service and to address all of these issues. There's been a bunch of us have talked about a tier system, guys with X amount, millions of miles or years with no
Right.
accidents. Maybe they should lax it. There needs to be some change. And this is just the little crack in the dam that made it through. Now, if people would just sit and think about the exemption before they write a comment and actually see that this could actually better the industry if this one gets through, this might force them to do something on the driver's behalf. That's all I'm hoping for. I don't want people to sit and be negative about it because you're just negative because you didn't think of it. I'm not doing carte blanche. I'm trying to help myself, but if it helps the whole industry, that's a win.
Read the Schmitts exemption request and make a comment on the proposal yourself via the docket at regulations.gov. Find a link to it in the show notes for this edition of Overdrive Radio, as noted at the top, or via the post that houses this podcast at overdriveonline.com. Side note here. If you are accessing the docket via a mobile phone's browser, it looks like there's a significant limitation to the regulations.gov site when it comes to accessing comments. Schmitts and I noticed this when the now more than 500 comments on the application began appearing earlier this week. Unlike on a laptop or desktop browser, the mobile site doesn't include the ability to navigate beyond the first 25 comments filed. I notified FMCSA of this, along with some questions about when we might see the ultimate response to the request, but the agency did not respond. All that is to say, if you want to read all of the publicly filed comments before filing your own, get to a laptop or desktop. Comments are open, in any case, through July 11th. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker songwriter and Overdrive contributor Long Haul Paul Marhofer, with percussion in this episode from a Marhofer track by the great Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by our own news editor Matt Cole, social media coordinator Holly Young, and executive editor Alex Lockey. Until next time, keep it pro out there.